Appreciate you tuning in. I'm Will LaVeist,
And I'm Eric Claville.
and you tune into LaVeist and Claville. Smart talk without all the noise, breaking down the black issues you care about with real facts, telling it straight from a college educated, streetwise black male perspective.
Because to us, that's simply how it is.
Today's show expectations of the Biden Harris administration. Dr. Claville, I got to tell you, as optimistic as I would like to be, my the reporter in me who covered politics, covered crime, covered a variety of beats, the Gen Xer in me tells me that yes, there will be some differences from this previous administration because coming out of the Trump administration, you can't go nowhere but up.
Right.
But I am not as, I guess I'm cautiously, let me say, optimistic about what is actually going to get done because you still got the political gamesmanship environment that has been going on for the past, dating back to, let's be honest, dating back to Clinton and Newt Gingrich,
Yeah.
between the Democrats and the Republicans going back and forth, jockeying, win at all costs. And when you look at the time that Biden is going to have to get things done, um, he's got essentially 2 years because there will be a
Yeah.
midterm election. He's up in age, not that his age, and I'm not talking from an age discrimination perspective, but I'm just talking from a reality that
Yeah, it's an age reality.
he's an age reality. And you've got a 50% of the country is voted for the other party.
Right.
So there's a high incentive for the Republicans to do whatever they can to continue
Right.
business as usual and not really be bipartisan and get some critical things done for the country. So convince me, bro. Convince me. Change up my optimism. My course is optimism.
Yeah. Well, Will, I can't change your cautious optimism.
Bordering on outright pessimism. Might as well just be honest with it. Yeah.
Well, Will, I can't change it because I share it, right? But I share a realistic view of how things work, how the world works, how politics works. I'm a realist, but I'm realistic about my optimism, right? And with that being the case, I believe that, first of all, the Biden-Harris administration is a blessing for America and the rest of the world as it relates to stability of process. Stability of process. Remember, Trump came in office and absolutely destroyed the process to which government works. There were no checks and balances. It was just confusion and chaos. There was no respect. There was just he created just an evil, even a more discriminatory environment where hatred could thrive. He did that through the administration, the lack of appointments. Keep in mind that the president himself can come in and have thousands of presidential appointments within agencies and even within the White House administration. Many of those were left unfilled.
Right.
In large part, everybody was warned against going in there because of the corruption that was at the door. And, that held true. Right now we see so many people that quit, so many people that have good men and women in government, in military, that came through and simply quit because it was such a toxic environment to work.
But Eric, isn't it true though that prior to his administration, people would have still described government in the same way, that it was toxic?
I don't think so.
And it was people, there's confusion.
No.
You're not getting anything done. You got to do nothing, Congress. So we're going from reality TV confusion and toxicity back to the normal establishment toxicity.
So,
how is that beneficial?
So, Will, I think that's part of disinformation, right? So, yeah, are you going to have toxicity with both parties? The answer is yes. Are both parties going to agree? The answer is absolutely not. But can both parties come back in the words of the now deceased John McCain, and operate in regular order, normal order, normalcy. And that's what I'm talking about. Having, intellectually engaging, fact-driven debates on the floors of Congress, in the House and Senate. We didn't get that. What we got was basically stump speeches, and a lot of individuals on the Republican side, the GOP, operating out of fear. As a matter of fact, a lot of individuals, Republicans, they fear what the president can do, Trump can do, as it relates to their constituencies to come after them.
Right.
We put in the airport, videos of Mitt Romney, videos of Lindsey Graham, people going after them in the airport, saying, "Why aren't you supporting the president?" These people have lost their absolute minds. They are vicious. They're violent because they understand that whatever they do, the system is not going to give them the punishment that it would give someone like you or me or others that are advocating for social injustice, right? So they're emboldened by that.
Right.
So what the Biden-Harris administration will do, first of all, it's going to bring stability and the operation of regular order and normalcy of government, both domestically and internationally. And I want to touch on international. The other thing what Trump did, his administration, he decimated the relationships across with our neighbors in Canada and in Mexico. Not only that, but he added toxicity and distance the United States from our allies in Europe. And we know that our allies in Europe and us supporting the military bloc against the former Soviet Union, Trump's friend, Vladimir Putin, is needed in that area so that the Soviet Union won't rise again the way that it was. And in addition to that, he's also gone into a financial tariff and trade war and a cybersecurity war with China. And we've ignored all the other countries around the world on the continent of Africa, the continent of South America, the Lesser and Greater Antilles of the Caribbean, and also in Southeast Asia and also the South Pacific, in order to give them assistance so that we can have good favor with them. And China has filled that void. So,
But Eric, but all that is good. But if the current, prior to Trump, system was toxic,
right,
and folks felt it wasn't working for them, how do you reconcile that going back to, because I understand restoring order is needed or normalcy, but how does going back to something that wasn't working and many people felt wasn't working, which is why they went to Trump in the first place, how does the prospect of going back give us reason to be encouraged? And especially when you talk about going back to a politician who has been around for God knows how long. He's got a long record of having been around, and he was representative of that type of governing that so many people felt was not working for him. And that's one of the reasons why, I've got this cautious optimism that's bordering on pessimism, because I'm not seeing where, okay, if we go back to that environment as opposed to going forward into something different, into something better, into something that was an improvement on where we were. Now, I'm looking at it, to improve on the past 4 years. That's such a low bar.
right.
How can you not improve on the past 4 years?
Right.
I'm looking at the previous 8 years, the previous 8 years of Bush before that led us down this road. And is the Biden-Harris administration going to achieve that?
Well, Will, listen, I'll say we can't put the world on his shoulders and say, listen, you've got to not only correct the last 4 years, and not just that, but you've got to change the way Washington and democracy has been working or are thought to have worked for the people overnight. I think what Joe Biden is going to become, he's going to become the modern day LBJ. The reason why I say that is because if you look at the time period of LBJ and the assassinations that took place of both John F. Kennedy, Robert Kennedy, Dr. King, Malcolm X, and how the country went through the long, hot summer
Right.
of protests,
Okay.
that mirrors what we're in right now. And it really took Joe Biden, it really took LBJ, those years that he had left in the administration, to turn the tide and say, listen, we've got to pass this civil rights legislation. We've got to get corporations on board. We've got to get cities on board, municipalities, to say we can't go through this again, right? And if we can't go through this again, we have to ensure that our country goes into a more progressive path. And I think that's what Joe Biden is going to end up being, for this particular 4 years. Now, of course, in politics, people are ambitious, right? So
Absolutely. Absolutely.
look, and if you're in politics and you're not ambitious, I don't know why you're in there. But
Ambitious as in selfish, as ambitious as in self preservation, ambitious as in he's got this year that is going to be about cleanup and trying to even find
yeah,
out the using the exterminator to try to find out all of the bugs and roaches and rats that have been
yeah,
put into government. So that gives him you basically say, okay, 2021 is going to be about that. Now
yeah,
2022 is what? Isn't that a midterm election
yeah.
year? So now what is
That's right.
the incentive on the side of the Republicans? And what is when you talk about people being ambitious and thinking about their self preservation, what is going to be the incentive now in 2022 coming into a midterm election where the possibility of swinging the House, swinging the Senate comes back into play? What's going to be the incentive to be bipartisan? You mentioned the time of LBJ. Well, in that climate, you had more bipartisan possibilities,
Yeah,
bipartisan type politicians in play. You also had a nation that had just dealt with the assassination of a beloved president. So you had, the Vietnam War going, you had a lot of disarray going on, but you had a climate that I think was more conducive to people trying to figure out how
yeah,
to a path forward that involved us together. You had less people on either side of the party that were so afraid, as you said, of making a decision that would cost them an election
yeah,
immediately. So we're in this, though there's similarities, we're in this climate that's such that I see after Biden and Harris spend this first year just doing cleanup and trying to
yeah.
find out where they need to spray the bug spray at, they're going to be facing a second year midterm election where there's going to be no incentive. It's going to be all about people campaigning and just jockeying and trying to stonewall.
Well, Will, first I have to disagree with you. It's not going to be the first year. It's going to take the entire 4 years to start cleaning up
Mm.
the mess that the Trump administration left, and the carnage. It's actually going to be even longer.
Well, I agree with that. I mean, I'm saying that this first year there's going to be so
Oh
much
yeah,
about that
yeah.
this first year, and now they'll be coming into a midterm. So
Hey, Will,
even
I,
less
I,
for
I agree with you.
yeah.
I agree. I agree. I mean, that's the first year is focused cleanup. Just like if you have a hurricane to come through, you can't talk about anything else but clean up the mess first, and then we could start over, right? Start rebuilding. So the number one thing that they're going to have to do is, of course, we'll talk about it in just a moment about COVID and the economy and
Mm.
so forth. Those are some major issues. But as relates to government, in the 4 years of a presidential election, the first 100 days is the most important. What you do in the first 100 days sets the course and the foundation for what's going to happen in the next 4 years. And then you have 18 months within that 100 days, 18 months
Right.
to where now whatever legislation you're going to push, you got to get it done because you've got Congress that's turning over every 2 years. You've got 1/3 of the Senate that's going through election every 2 years. So, with that being the case, you now have the most power in the first 100 days and 18 months of your administration. That also includes the the second term, if you're lucky enough to get it, right?
Right.
Everyone else is going to start jockeying for position to take your position as president or in whatever committee seat and whatever position in the House and the Senate that you can get. So, you know, I want to move to policy in just a moment. But before we do, I want to just say that again. Biden and Harris are going to have to first bring order, normal order and regular order to our society, domestically and internationally. That's number one.
So you saying essentially what I'm hearing you say too, and I tend to agree with you on this, is that whatever they're going to do, they got to get it done now in this first year while they have
Yeah,
a Democratic House and Senate. They've got to actually, whatever they is they're going to do, if it's going to be infrastructure and buy, whatever the case,
got to get it done.
it's got to happen now because.
Got to get it done. Got to get it done.
So what's the likelihood? What do they need to do, and how do you see the other party participating in helping them get things done?
Well, forget the other party. If I'm a Democratic advisor, I say forget the other party because they forgot you. And what you have to do is when you have power, use it because you never know where you're going to get it again. Mitch McConnell showed that. He was the epitome of that. He did not care about the rules. If the rules didn't fit what he wanted to do, he changed it. And his goal, even after Robert Bork hearings, even after the more specifically Clarence Thomas hearings, his goal was to pack the court. That was his goal, and he achieved it. Now, it took years to get it done, but being a very strategic tactician of politics, you have that patience, and that's what he's shown. Now, what Chuck Schumer has to do in the Senate, Nancy Pelosi in the House, and Joe Biden in the White House, you have to forget the other side and implement those measures, those policies, those bills, the stimulus, the infrastructure package that's going to help everybody. Because when everybody eats, everybody's happy. And that's what that new stimulus bill and package and infrastructure bill has to do. Get people back to work, give opportunities, equitable opportunities for African Americans, for women, for other people of color to operate fully, okay, in the business financial system of America. And at the end of the day, they have to pay the debt to the black vote that got them into the office. So we got to keep that at the forefront as
well. Yeah, that's the concern that I have is that I think on paper, I think they all understand that rationale of what you said about putting in policies that enable things to work for the majority of Americans. I mean, I remember Barack Obama, President Obama's famous statement was a rising tide lifts all boats.
Right.
But as a political consultant, that politics is about bringing home the bacon for your constituents,
right?
Your specific constituents. So again, the jockeying that's going to be going on amid all of this policy talk is how do I bring something home for my people, for individuals,
right.
So somehow Joe Biden, the administration is going to have to, as you said, put forth policies that enable people to buy in based on knowing that their mentality is going to be, hey, I only want to get in for what's something that's going to benefit my people. And so you got that whole give and take of, okay, in order to get that done, now you got to throw something else into the bill that people may on another side are not going to like. So he's got this big argument between the progressive wing of the party, the Democratic Party, and the more moderate and the progressives that want him to go much farther than his instincts. Right? I just don't see in his history how he's going to effectively navigate this now.
Well, you bring up a very important point because AOC, Senator Bernie Sanders, have been ringing the alarm with this issue. Now, you don't want to be like Mitch McConnell and the GOP when Trump came into office and their promise. Remember, they ran on repeal and replace. Remember that?
Yeah.
It's like so long ago because so much has happened in this Trump administration. but they ran on the mantra of repeal and replace Obamacare. When they finally got power in the White House, in the Senate, and the Supreme Court, you know what they said? We're not interested in that anymore.
Hmm.
So, in essence, they were saying that there's nothing wrong with Obamacare, right? You know, and the hypocrisy of campaigns and stump speeches and the hypocrisy of what they stood for was number one, right? So, with that being the case, I think that what we have to do is ensure that the Democrats don't ignore the progressives of their party, the progressives that actually moved the needle forward, that got on board, that did not split the Democratic ticket in the party in order to elect Joe Biden and Kamala Harris. Now, if they do that by passing policies that help, for example, making community college free and affordable based upon the Pell Grant,
Hmm.
uh, for forgiving student loan debt for individuals who actually have paid for years.
I
And
certainly
those,
would love that. Yeah.
right. And actually, I think student loans is a dichotomy. I don't think to go to college, you shouldn't give a loan. It should be a grant. And I think also because when you have an educated society, society wins. But at the same time, I think what you're looking at is restructuring how student loans operate. I think after a person graduates, I think if they paid for 10 years, I think the rest of their student assistance, financial assistance, should be forgiven
Hmm.
or even less, right? Now, not just student loans, but also healthcare. We have to continue to improve the Obamacare for Americans because that's the number one issue during COVID. That's going to cause individuals to rise or fall financially and also in this economy. And then lastly, Will, I think that we have to answer the call for social justice and social equity that the summer of Black Lives Matter has shown us, and the violent mob and insurrection that show racial double standards have exemplified in the call for awakening and an addressing of social injustice in our country.
You know, I agree with all of those points that you said. What I'm struggling with is I don't see in Joe Biden's history, I don't see a person who would be able to deliver on that. If past performance is an indicator, possible indicator of future results. And I think that's where my pessimism comes in. Now, perhaps he was in his past navigating the sort of moderate lane between Republicans, Democrats, progressives, conservatives, so forth, because his goal was to become president.
Right.
And now that he is president, maybe, and he's at in the fourth quarter of his life, there is no need to do what he feels he needs to do to be liked or to uh, get himself to the next position on the chessboard because, his end goal was to become the president, and he's achieved that.
Right.
But recently, there was a, tape that was released where he's talking to black leaders about issues and again speaking very much in the tone that's more similar to his history and than it is to someone who understands what's truly fully at stake, understands where we're at as a nation, and how, as I mentioned earlier, it's not about just improving or going back to normalcy prior to Trump, but it's actually going back, in my mind, is actually going back and looking at what was wrong and what wasn't working that led to Trump that we need to improve upon so that we never have a Trump type experience again. And I just don't see that. I mean, I wonder about what your take is on that conversation that he had with the black leaders.
Yeah, but before I go to that, those leaked tapes and the conversations that took place with traditional civil rights leaders, I want to say that the way. Keep in mind, Joe Biden has operated across different decades, and in every decade, America has changed.
Hmm.
I don't think we can hold that against him, and I don't think we can hold that against anyone, especially when you evolve, right? And
But
I think that
has he evolved? That's what I'm asking.
I think so. I think so, and I think that his experiences, being able to work across the aisle, at the time with Southern segregationists, and then fast forward, he's worked with as vice president for Barack Obama, the first black president. I think it shows that he is the man for the time, and he is the man for the job. The question becomes, Will, and you bring it up and address it. Uh, will he do it? Right, and it goes back to us holding our elected officials accountable for the issues that they ran on to do the things that they need to do for the people, right? So let's go to those discussions with the traditional civil rights organizations. That again shows that as much as we change, some things remain the same. So if we're going to have true change in our country and true change for African Americans, we're going to have to continue to push and hold his feet to the fire, hold the administration to the fire, so that true change can come. Now, unfortunately, that's the burden of African Americans.
Mm.
Unfortunately, that's the burden of our people. But if you look at where we've come from, right, and this is the season where we have an opportunity to reflect upon one of our greatest civil rights leaders, Dr. Martin Luther King Jr., and also with Black History Month. Now, we have these opportunities to reflect on how far we've come. And, that's nothing to sneeze at, because I believe Black people in America are the moral marker for morality
I agree with
across.
that. I agree with that.
You know, the way America treats its Black people is the way the world sits up and take notice and say that I have permission to do this or that. And as African Americans and Black people in America, we are the inspiration of all oppressed people in the world. I mean, if you look at the great contributions that we've had and that we continue to have in society, I think it speaks volumes. It speaks volumes to the perseverance of African Americans. It speaks volumes to the optimism of African Americans, and it speaks volumes to the will that we continue to work toward of harmony and humanity in the country that we built, our ancestors built, bled and died for, and that the rest of the world can see.
Well, as we wrap, one of the things that I think Black people need to do, because we always want to end this show talking about what Black people need to do, advice we need to do, is we've got to look at this country, look at this system, and claim it as our own, because it is, as you said, our ancestors bled and died for it. We need to be patriotic, because I know when I go overseas, my passport has clout. Unlike if I was coming from some other country, I don't want to name and disparage a country, but I think that when you put those two combinations together, you understand that this is our country too,
That's right.
and people are fighting for this country, and that tells you something, that this is a country that's worth fighting for. So I think that we need to stay engaged and fight for our country. What do you think Black people need to do?
Well, I put an exclamation point behind everything that you just said. Take the position that this is our country. We built it with our labor for 247 years. We built this country. Our with our talents, with our sweat, with our blood, with our tears, and we were the caretakers of those that rule this country as well. Take a look at the contributions that we have given. Take a look at the opportunity that we have, and keep pushing and keep striving for excellence in every aspect and facet of life. Because we come from great people and great stock, and it's our responsibility to continue that legacy.
Well, that's another wrap for this edition of the LaVeist and Claville. Special thanks to our producer, Ben Bailey, keeps everything right and tight behind the scenes on the controls. Get back with us as we discuss Black issues in order to empower you and all of us to do the things that we must do to thrive.
And follow us on social media Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, LinkedIn, and our website at LaVeistandClaville.com. And if you have any questions, feel free to email us or any ideas for shows and topics at LaVeistandClaville@gmail.com. Because at the end of the day, that's the way it is. See you next time.